Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Joy, it's so great to be back with you and continuing our own dialogue.
Glad
And
to be
I,
back.
oh, thank you. And I like the jacket. I just want to pick up on something that came out of our last conversation, talking about what Coca-Cola was doing to increase the numbers of diversity
Mhm.
attorneys and specifically Black attorneys. And we talked about creating an inclusive culture as far as what law firms can do to create a more welcoming and nurturing environment for these attorneys, but specifically creating programs around allyship, where typically attorneys in leadership, predominantly white men and women, would sponsor, mentor, and cultivate the professional and career development of attorneys of color and
Mhm.
attorneys of underrepresented groups.
Mhm.
How would you suggest that these firms go about creating and implementing these types of programs?
I think one of the things that any firm can do if they really want to improve their inclusivity or the inclusive environment that they want to cultivate, I would say you've got to learn to live as an ally. It's one thing to do performative things. And when I say performative, I mean put out a statement that says we disavow racism and we value inclusive environments. But then what are you doing? It's one thing to change. You can put a banner across your entire website that says Black Lives Matter, but then what are you doing? And it's the doing that changes the actual environment. You can say anything. And I think this goes back to what Coca-Cola was trying to accomplish with that edict is you can say that you value all kind of things. I want to see it. What are you doing? Where are the people that you said you were going to go out and hire? Put your money where your mouth is specifically. And I think learning to live as an ally is different from understanding racism or understanding sexism or understanding homophobia, ableism, anything, ageism. You can understand it. But if you're not doing anything to actively combat the oppression that comes along with it, then you're just watching. And you got to do more than just watch. And so when I say live as an ally, that's day in, day out. That is changing the way you view the world and how you move through it. It's more than just saying, passing down to your HR person, let's hire some more Black lawyers. It's understanding the difference of how that new talent might see your organization, understanding what barriers they may come up against and taking those barriers down, not assuming that their experience is going to be the same one you had when you joined the firm 10 years ago. It's speaking up on behalf of underrepresented groups when they're actually not represented in the room. When no one else is there, don't laugh at the joke. Don't let the slight slur go by. Question the things that may sound discriminatory to you. When they say, "Well, I just don't think that guy is a good fit," or I just don't think she's got the right look." Really? Explain to me exactly what you mean. That's being an ally. You don't have to stand on top of the table with a bullhorn, but you do say something, and you say it all the time. And yes, it can be confrontational sometimes, but it doesn't have to
Yeah,
be. But
yeah. I
this is
mean
what I
that
mean
that
when I say,
notion, yeah, that
yeah,
notion of intervening, uh,
intervening. Yes.
when you witness a bias incident in the workplace,
Mhm.
or a racist event in the workplace,
Mhm.
and you speak up in the moment and not be a bystander.
Right. I had another company I was dealing with, and they have a field sales force, and the question came up: what do we do when some member of our sales force encounters racist behavior, sexist behavior through one of their clients? Now we're talking actual real money dollars, right? So now we're talking actual cash flow. How do you address that? And the answer is all money isn't good money, which is very hard to grasp for a lot of people. But when you allow those things to happen, when you say we value diversity, we value inclusion, we want to be a welcoming organization, firm, company, etc., and then your employees, especially employees of color, employees from marginalized groups, when they see you pick money over their dignity, what message are you sending when you tell them to look the other way, or you tell someone else, well, don't say anything because that's a big client? What you're saying is that revenue is more important than someone else's livelihood or someone else's dignity, respect, sense of self, ID. You're belittling everything that they're worth for cash. And that is very telling. Now, I'm not saying that you have to fire everyone, but you can have that conversation with your clients. You know what? This interaction is becoming uncomfortable. I believe that there are some things that need to be addressed, and we'll come back to it, et cetera. And let the company that you're working with know, hey, we don't do this because we are an ally organization. We are an inclusive organization. And the things that we're hearing and seeing that you say are not where we want our people to be. And so, yeah, you may have to fire a client from time to time. And that can be hard to do,
But it could have incredibly valuable long-term benefits to the dedication, commitment in the organization. And Joy, how would, let's say, a partner at a law firm in leadership, a white man or a white woman, engage with an associate who's an attorney of color or LGBTQ or an underrepresented group and say, I want to be your sponsor, I want to be your mentor? How should that conversation go?
Well, first, I think there's a little research, a little homework that has to be done beforehand, because it's very comfortable, very easy to approach someone from a marginalized community and ask them to do all the heavy lifting of educating you on their experiences. A lot of those experiences are very similar across the board. Dozens of books have been written about those lived experiences. Read a book, watch a video, watch a TED Talk, get some understanding of what they may have gone through before they got to you. And then you can have a more educated conversation with them and continue to learn more about the nuances of their lived experience without it being a blank slate. Teach me everything that, help me understand racism as it has affected you in your entire life. But first, help me understand racism. That's a lot for your new hire or your new person to try to shoulder. And I think, and that can go for any marginalized community. There is a history of how the LGBTQ community has been treated in multiple countries across multiple centuries. There is a history of how people have been treated that have had different cognitive or social disorders across multiple centuries. Find that information and read up on it so you have a little bit of background before you have that first exploratory, interpersonal conversation with someone.
Right. Even just Googling microaggressions, implicit bias, code switching, at least that things like those topics can get you on the right path.
And for those of you who don't like to read or don't have the time to digest the entirety of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, first of all, there's a lot of TED Talks that cover the same thing because she did those before she wrote the book or as she was writing the book. Secondly, there's a lot of TED Talks about everything. And so just Google TED Talk on talking to my children about racism. There's like 3. TED Talk on the history of sexist discrimination in the workplace. There's like 7. So just look at a few and get a feel for how that lived experience has been for someone that does not look like you, talk like you, doesn't come from where you come from. Go ahead.
No, thank you, Joy. And I also just want to make the distinction of what a sponsor is and what a mentor is.
Yes.
And I think we align on this. And you could correct me if I'm wrong. From my perspective, someone who acts as a sponsor is an advocate, and they're advocating for the career advancement, the career development of an individual that they take a specific interest in. And a mentor is someone has high level of experience or knowledge, and they share that knowledge. It's more of a knowledge share experience. It might, also deal with some of the emotional intelligence or professional development, but I see sponsor and mentor as 2 separate types of actions. And do you see it that way? Do you see a difference?
That's exactly how I would explain it. A mentor is, someone who's been where you're trying to go, and they can tell you their road to get there and give you their experiences, give you their knowledge, but it is very much hands off. Like you can do that over phone calls. You can do that. It's a passive support, but then active support is a sponsor where they are in the room where it happens, right? They're banging on the table. I think David is the best choice for this role. I think we need to extend Joy an opportunity to show what she can do. They're advocating, as you said, on your behalf. I'll add a third category of an ally. An ally doesn't necessarily have to know anything that can advance your career, doesn't necessarily have to be the person in the room making that decision. The ally is every single person that speaks up when they see something unjust happening, no matter how big or small. And that's how you change the culture at the microscopic level. You know, every day, every way, somebody's standing up and saying, you know what, I'm just the admin assistant, but what I just saw wasn't appropriate. Right. You know, and you know what, I'm a partner, and what I just saw wasn't appropriate. Everyone speaking up, that's the ally, and that's everyone. You don't have to have power and clout to stand up for what's right.
I can't say it any better. And I think coupled with that is having the accountability function of holding people accountable for bad behavior.
Absolutely.
And not just looking the other way. Once again, I had a great experience talking to you, Joy, and I learned so much from you. And I look forward to our next session.
Anytime. I could talk all day. I love doing this. So just let me know. I had a ball.
All right. Thank you so much, Joy.